Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Monday evening live stream. Probably pretty late for you guys over in the East Coast with the time change, but this is probably going to be the time that we're going to start doing these more often. So hopefully, not too late for some of you people with the time change. But this is going to be an interesting stream because we have changed the whole channel. We've changed our Facebook group. If you haven't been watching or haven't been paying attention, last time we had Coral View Hydros on, and it was a really fun stream. If you guys didn't see it, I highly recommend it. And we talked a little bit about reptiles, and it really got me intrigued with starting a channel about reptiles. So, strangely enough, I did that, and I decided, you know what, it's probably easier to just merge the two channels into one. And once I started doing that, it's interesting because my wife said she'd want to join me. So now our channel is me and my wife's channel. So you'll be seeing her also on some live streams as well from time to time. You'll be seeing her in videos from time to time. So I'm really excited about this change. I know there's a lot of you people out there that might not be interested in reptiles, but I think the automation side and a few other things that I do will come hand in hand with reefing. So today, I'm really excited for our first reptile type stream to talk about SensorPush sensors. I did a video about their products. I've been using their products for quite a while. I know of a couple friends that use them as well. This is probably one of the best automation products on the market for anyone that has a reptile enclosure. But we're going to find out some other ideas and possibly some other ways that you can use it. Furthermore, we're going to be giving away three of these guys, three of these SensorPush sensors. So we need to get 25 people in the stream or more, and we're going to pull out three winners out of the randomizer over here that we got running. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in the man, the myth, the legend from SensorPush. This is John Cousins from SensorPush. How's it going, John?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I've been waiting to do this. I know we scheduled it quite a while ago. I think you've been traveling quite a bit. Um,
Yes.
Unfortunately, I haven't been. I've been sitting at home programming. Uh, but it's nice to meet you. It's nice to learn about your products a little more in depth tonight. So tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about how SensorPush got started. Because I could tell you, based on my use of this product, there's nothing like it out there. There really isn't.
Well, for us, the we have been doing a lot of different kinds of projects over the years of every imaginable kind, doing engineering and design work for all kinds of tech products. And I have an apartment in New York where I am now, and I have a guitar collection because I've played guitar for years. And I had a problem in the winter because the steam would get so bad that it would get incredibly dry in here. And then my business partner and also another engineer and designer, Nick Sears, he had a house where he was upstate where he was re-insulating the attic. And we just kind of occurred to us that, we have some tech that we'd had around that we've been kind of messing around with. Wow, that's the same product that solves that problem, really. So temperature and humidity, re-insulating an attic, and then, with this guitar collection, those were so totally different. And then we just kind of started thinking, wow, that really fits a lot of different use cases. And we just started imagining, well, it's cigars, it's, people who have, um, boats, people have, all sorts of different things. And then we just started hearing from everybody. So, people who are drying concrete, people with professional bakeries, people who are growing orchids, the list is just kind of ridiculously long. But to your point about merging the reef with the reptile stuff, that actually makes a lot of sense to us here because there have been so many different use cases. So it's not just SensorPush that kind of like touches on these different sorts of things. It's just the idea that people are understanding how to do automation in general.
Right.
Like it occurs to people of every age group. So someone might be 20 and then we have people who are 80, who are all using this stuff, and it's occurring to them to figure out ways to automate stuff. So it makes a lot of sense that you're bridging the gap. And there's from what we can see, is there's a massive amount of knowledge sharing in these different areas, because there's a lot of overlap of the needs that people have, whether it's, certainly temperature and humidity, but it's like, okay, well, what else do you have that's the same? It's like, well, we have lighting that is, applicable to people who are doing indoor herb growing or cannabis growing. We have irrigation needs that are, different kind, like you want to control flows of fluids or whatever. Anyway, the point just being that there's so much overlap that the knowledge sharing is really paying off when people cross things over. And for guys like Nick and I, who have the kind of studio where it was about engineering and design for a lot of very different things, we were a good kind of fit for making products that apply to a lot of different stuff. Like the app is a great example where it shows the data in the app and all that other kind of stuff. And it's, from a functionality standpoint, very straightforward, but under the hood, there's a lot of high performance tech that goes on that was the kind of specialty that you only develop when you do those sorts of things where you're measuring data a lot and all those kinds of things and having to visualize it like that. But, it applies to so many different things, and there's so much overlap. And so we're always happy to talk to people about the really different kinds of things they're getting involved in.
I'm doing some
it's
crazy
exciting
stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
You touched on a lot of things, but for my viewers, I gotta be honest. I do a lot of automation. My company, we do home automation. That's my company. But I started YouTube for reefing and reptiles. But there's a lot of do-it-yourself products out there. There's light bulbs, there's hubs, there's all kinds of stuff. And I gotta be honest, yours is by far the easiest to set up. I mean, it literally takes 2 seconds to set these up. And trust me, I go through all different products. The fact that I can just sit this on a table, take my phone out and say add sensor, and then it's there. Like, that's seriously all you do. There's nothing to it. It's super simple. One of my favorite features of the product is the graphs and the data, which you mentioned a little bit. For those that don't know, most of these humidity products, or not even humidity, temperature products, even the Coral View Hydros, which I mentioned, they only give you about a week of data usually. You give I don't know how long you give, actually. It looks like more than
there's no limit
a couple
set
years.
to it. Yeah, you can go. I have stuff from the beginning still on my app. So 5.5, 6 years. Yeah.
That's just amazing. And especially if you want to get track of humidity, which is what we're discussing, I think, first and foremost, here in the reptile room, or for some people that are reefing here, even in your reef cabinets, you will know your humidity to the minute all throughout the day, and you can see trends. And there's really nothing like that on the market, and that's why I love your product so much. There really isn't.
Well, the other thing is the chip that we use on our circuit board is we use a manufacturer out of Switzerland called Sensirion, and their company's entire specialty really is humidity. I mean, they make other kinds of sensors, but their real specialty is humidity sensing in particular. And so what's great is that, we've used a couple of different series from the different chips that they manufacture. And they have always been really, really reliable, that out of the box, they're going to have between, this percentage and that percentage plus or minus accuracy. And one of the things that makes it easy for us as a company to help support and stand by these things is when they're off, we know that they're so reliable that if there's a problem, we know that, hey, listen, there's some big problem. You're not going to keep that device. You always reach out to us. We'll swap it out. So they're that reliable, and they're the go-to sensing chip, and we use them on all of our circuit boards.
Yeah, so that's one of the questions I was going to ask you is, does your product have a specific warranty? Because I've had a couple that have had issues in the past, not very many, like I think one out of my 15 or 16 that I have. And you guys just seem to just send me a new one, no questions asked. Uh, I'm just curious how your warranty does work because,
We have a 1 year warranty, but we are they're just not that frequent of a problem. So we've got a situation where when someone has it, we just try to do our best to get them swapped out. So it's officially a year, but we tend to kind of operate like sort of like LL Bean has had that kind of forever. I think had that policy of look, if your grandfather's boots are out after a really long time, we'll see if we can help you out. So that's what we always tell people. Like, look, if it's expired, please reach out anyway. We'll see what we can do. We usually are able to help out.
yeah, I've had the only one I had an issue with was me being silly and putting it directly in the sunlight here in Arizona for for about 6 months. It didn't seem to like that very much. Um,
Right.
I don't know if they're rated for being in the sunlight at 130 degrees. Um,
Well, that's actually an important thing. I'm glad I brought that up because, any thermometer you're not going to want to leave in the direct sunlight, no matter whether it's digital or not, because the materials of it, even if you work really hard at trying to fight against it, the materials of the case of whatever it's in are going to get heated up by the sun. They're going to throw the temperatures off during the day by a certain amount, frequently 10 degrees as much upward. So any thermometer, whether it's ours or some other companies, you always want to try to shield it from. In fact, there's an entire industry around creating radiation shields for thermometers. And some of them are plastic and they're really basic. It's just kind of a lid or a case that kind of lets air flow in, but it protects the sunlight. It keeps the sunlight from shining on it. Or there are ones that are incredibly elaborate, like you'd need for an official weather station that has actual active ventilation systems and that kind of stuff. But my point just being, I'm glad you brought up because it's not something everybody knows is that, really to try to do your best to keep it out of the direct sunlight because it's not really what you're trying to measure. You're trying to measure the air temperature. So now as successive generations of the devices have come out, we've tried to isolate thermally on the circuit board. In other words, if you had actually it was an empty sensor case, like say that's the actual sensing chip, right? You have the circuit board maybe touch here and touch here, but there's a gap around this side and that side just so it touches it as little as possible. So we do as much as we can based on what the manufacturers of the chips specify and all that kind of stuff to try to fight against that. But regardless, when it's temperature sensing, you really want to try to keep it out of the direct sunlight. And that, I don't know to what extent with Reef, but certainly with reptiles, there's definitely a lot of lamps at work and different kinds of heating elements and sorts of things. You just should always keep that in mind that, what is that heat source radiating out from it? And, the sensor is going to measure what it's near. It's going to measure its environment, so if you really want to get the air, try to just factor that into your placement of the device. Same goes for humidity, but it's particularly sensitive with temperature.
yeah, so it's something I've been wanting to talk to you about since I contacted you is how these work. Specifically, I have one here. It's hard to see because of the green screen, but they're very small. The fact that they're blue, I got to tell you, is a good color, specifically for reptiles because you don't see it. Unless you really look for it, if it's hidden behind plants, the blue is really difficult to see, which is good. It's a good thing, and I really like it's they're easy to just stick anywhere you want to stick them, pretty much. So how does this work exactly? I've always been curious. Where does it sense the temperature and the humidity from? And the reason I
Actually,
ask specifically is because I want you to mention your different models because there are models that are waterproof, from my understanding, and some that aren't. And that's what I'm curious how it knows, and if I was to get a lot of water on it, would it affect the humidity?
okay, those are all really good questions. I guess the basics that will apply to any of the sensor models is that they're a circuit board that's got a battery, and they all use the same kind of battery. And on the circuit board are just a couple of basic things, but the main two things really are the Bluetooth radio for the wireless broadcast and the chip itself that does the sensing. Now, and again, for all of our models, the sensing element for the humidity and the temperature are right next to each other. They're integrated into the same chip. So when I point out where things are located on each device, just remember that the temperature sensing and the humidity sensing are happening in that same location. So we've got three models. We've got one that is the basic model, which is the HT1. Let's see if I'll center over here. And we manufacture these. We use the batteries come from Japan. The sensing chip comes from Switzerland. The plastic comes from oil in the ground or whatever. But these are manufactured, assembled in China. We do all of our programming in the United States, so any of the firmware that goes on this device or any device that's built overseas is developed in the US, it's hosted in the US, and all that kind of stuff. So these are essentially put together in China. This model is the HTW, which is we manufacture here in the US. Again, the chips are Switzerland, the batteries are Japanese. There's that reality of manufacturing, but these are all top to bottom, otherwise made in the US. We have a third device, and I don't know if I have one handy here at my desk, but it's very similar to this one. It's called the HTP XW, and it's slightly more accurate in terms of its to a point that is almost undetectable, really, unless you really got good lab equipment. But it's definitely slightly more accurate, but it has a pressure sensor added to it, which is it's really handy if you're having a weather station or if you do something like you're tuning a carburetor or something like that. But for most use cases, this would be the one that you'd want to have.
Right. That's the ones.
The other two, yeah, and the other main difference between these two, other than I'll go into a few of the specific elements, but the other big difference is, I'm trying to center here. Here we go. Is that this model has a waterproof or water resistant case, and the back side of this seam, like where my pinky is kind of running along, that's actually ultrasonically welded, and then this cap is for the battery, has an O-ring around it and that kind of stuff. So they're about IP65 in terms of the rating, but we actually have that's yet to be officially tested. We're going to run that with the XW pretty soon. But they are, like I said, water resistant. So they're meant to get splashed. They're meant to, if they get rained on, it's not a big deal. All those different kinds of things.
Okay.
There is. So that's important to keep in mind. This unit, the HT1, this back cap can come off, and this hole has the electronics exposed through it. So that's sort of the difference. It's US made. It's easier to change the battery because it has a cap on it, and it's water resistant. Those are the sort of like selling point differences of the devices. But in terms of functionality, kind of like how it does its sensing and where, and that's really critical to like placement.
Right. So that's exactly what I was curious about.
Okay, so this unit that I'm sort of wiggling back and forth, the HT1, I have it facing backwards to you now. And this unit, the other one, the HT.W, is facing forwards. And I'm doing that because that hole where my pinky is right there on the HTW, and this hole over here, this little one on the HT1, that's where the sensing element is located on the device. So right on the circuit board, right near that hole with each of them is where the sensing element is located. So that means when I say the sensing element, that's the chip that's made in Switzerland that does the temperature and humidity right next to each other. Key difference, because this one over here is water resistant. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm a little slow moving these around because my screen's okay. It's reversed, so I'm sort of having to think backwards. But this one, since it's water resistant, also has a specially designed cap in the hole itself that is designed by that Swiss sensing chip manufacturer, and it's designed to allow for the permeation of water vapor, so for humidity, and not liquid water. And it's sort of it's like a Teflon material that's essentially the same kind of thing as Gore-Tex. So it's great because it will, help protect the electronics inside there, but it also will not allow, liquid water into it. So you really know what you're getting. Now, it doesn't mean these are entirely bulletproof. They're water resistant. And just like any water resistant device, if there's a huge amount of condensation that forms on the outside, it means it can also form on the inside. So it's not,
Well, the one thing that
it's not
I
bulletproof.
struggle isn't the right word, but the one thing in the reptile enclosures is I spray a lot of water, mist it a lot. And these do seem to get wet. I mean, sometimes they don't if I can aim it where I want to aim it, but that's why I got the waterproof ones. So I guess the biggest question, which I think you answered, is if these do get wet, the humidity is still going to be spot on. It's not going to reflect a higher humidity because it has water. Is that correct on it?
That's right. I mean, if you had a situation where there was, just it was, covered in water, there was so much water on it that the surface tension kind of held a droplet over the hole, then it's just blocking the hole, and then no, it won't do that. But to the point about like, hey, if you've sprayed it and there's a bunch of water droplets on it, no, it should operate as normal as it's designed. The other
Okay.
unit, it has that vulnerability in the back. One other thing I should mention about this, and this is whether it goes with our sensors or anyone else's, wireless signals won't transmit through water. So
No, they won't.
even just a tiny amount, you can't submerge it and expect it to ever broadcast. And that goes with anyone's. It's just a phenomenon of 2.4 gigahertz, which is what Bluetooth does and it's what Wi-Fi does. Just water stops it dead. So that's one thing to keep on. Now, people have done things with certain kinds of like, aquatic environments where they've taken these and they've, put them in vacuum sealed and stuck them on the side of a tank. And through the glass, it tends to work, but they're not designed for that. But
Right.
it's just something to keep in your mind as you're kind of being inventive
So,
about this stuff, that it won't work underwater.
so mounting them, that's going to be my question. My next question. If I mounted it with the battery side like this, would it work?
Right.
Does it matter?
It'll work. Yeah. I mean, this hole, you want to try to let it get the air to this hole,
Okay,
this
so
one
this
here.
guy right here.
Yeah, so and it's the same with the other one. You want to let that sensing hole get air. I mean, it will work. Like if you kind of had that up against, like if I had that in my hand, or flat up against the surface, whatever it was, just up against something, the it would work and it would get the humidity readings, but it would take a little bit longer for them to
And
kind
what
of
does the top
equilibrate.
the top hole do, if anything? It's just for
It's for
looks.
hanging.
Oh, it's for
It's for
hanging.
like putting a wire tie through it is what a lot of people do,
I
and that's
see.
this. And this one's for hanging too. That
Okay.
the one that goes through the corner.
Yeah, because I it's interesting you say that because here in my enclosures I get a lot of mud in there in that little
Right.
hole, and I go, oh, it's not working, and I go, oh no, the hole's in front.
Yeah, right. And this is that's all these are for. I'm trying to let the light kind of come through it. It's
No, it
just for
looks
hanging. It's
perfect.
like
I
a
can see
gap
it.
in the plastic. But
Okay,
so
cool.
yeah, so keep that in mind. So that's where the sensing element is. That's where it's most sensitive for temperature. That's where it's most sensitive for humidity. And on this device, it's better protected from like splash proof is probably the best way to think of them.
Okay, and I've also noticed that mine does dew point as well. I believe.
Right.
I
They
don't
do.
know personally. I don't know when I'd ever use that, but for those that are watching, it does do dew point as well. And I don't even know. Again, you would know the use for that, but I don't know why I'd ever
It's
need it.
really, it's actually worth, it's the kind of thing we have a minute, I recommend looking up because it's actually a great way to, it's a lot, it's sort of a weird concept, but it's a really good way to determine how comfortable a room is. It's like the best way to figure it out. So it's worth taking a look for a minute. It's not really the subject we're talking about, but if you get our sensors and you decide, well, what else can I use these for? And you want to just know like how to get the right setting dialed in on the dehumidifier or an air conditioner or those kinds of things. Dew point is great for assessing like how comfortable is this room going to really be. I mean, I live in New York City now, but I grew up in Florida.
Oh
And
boy.
dew point in Florida, man, it's a good thing to know a lot about because it really will help
Well,
you
you know,
like you've been in a room where the air conditioner's running, it still feels crummy. It's because that's not being factored in.
well, I'm here in Arizona. We don't have a lot of humidity, obviously, but I'm looking at a lot of the questions, and it's interesting. They're asking a lot of fish tank and reefing related questions.
Mhm.
I can tell you that one of the one of the uses for one of them that I have for years is I just stick it in my bedroom, and it's there because if I want to dehumidify or humidify the room, here in Arizona, it's almost impossible to get the right percentage unless you have a sensor.
Right.
And for those that are asking some other use cases, I know John can spend the next 3 hours telling us all the use cases. But trust me, just remember it's a humidity and temperature sensor primarily, and there's so many different uses for it. But the reason I have him on here today, and the reason I'm so interested, is I have a lot of reptile enclosures. And what's so amazing about your product is one of the greatest things is you have your gateways. And the gateways are what brings these to life for me personally because I have an outdoor enclosure for one of my reptiles. And what I was able to do is I was able to run an Ethernet cord outside underground into my enclosure. And now I can put these sensors in there and they hook up to your gateway. So I always know what the temperature is and the humidity of my outdoor enclosures as well. And just things like that. There's so many use cases that makes these so great. That's just one of them. You know, I have them in all of my enclosures, and I'm going to bring up a picture. I don't know if people have seen this. I don't know if you can see it, John, but
Oh yeah, I remember this.
yeah. So one of the
I love
things,
this. Yeah, this is cool.
so one of the greatest things about your product, and DJ Mike just asked, I think is the question I'm about to ask, is it appears, and forgive me if I'm mistaken, because if I'm ruining some secret, don't, you know, tell me, hey, be quiet. But I believe you open up your API. Is that accurate in saying?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact, and that's with both the cloud, whether with the gateway and with the newer model sensors like the HDW that you've got. You can even do it through Bluetooth programmatically, and I'm happy to get pretty nerdy about that stuff if you want. But yes,
Oh, you're in a
it's a
nerdy stream. Trust me.
good. It's one of my favorite places. But no, it really is a true. It is like most engineers and designers and developers and hackers. If you can make something open, it's always better. And so anything we don't have open, it's just we haven't had the opportunity yet to do it. But other than the cloud is a cloud API. It's sort of relatively traditional, but allows you to pull down data. You can get current conditions. You can get not just current conditions, but you can get the battery levels. You can get different kinds of settings. You can
Oh yeah.
look at historical readings, that kind of stuff. But the Bluetooth API, like if you're the kind of person who really likes things like has a Raspberry Pi or a Windows machine or anything that
Yep.
just has like a Bluetooth 4 or higher reader on it, you can't get the historical readings off and sort of the metadata like battery levels, but you can get all the current conditions. And so for a system, so some people want to like they don't want their data on the cloud, which we totally get. I mean, I always specify, look, all of our stuff's developed here, it's hosted here. I'm one of the developers. I built a lot of the iOS app and part of the Android app. So it's like we're very hands-on with the tech. We don't farm this stuff out. It's not hosted overseas, whatever.
That's
But
great.
even so, and we all understand without any doubt, like why some people want to have their own data closed off and their own, stuff. We get it. That's what's cool about the Bluetooth stuff. If you really want to stay closed up, it allows you to read the current conditions. You would only have to use the app not even for the cloud, but you only have to use the app to get like the battery levels and that kind of stuff off.
Yeah.
So your point, Derek, yeah, you can get access to just about everything that we
So a lot
have
of
available.
people are asking, and I wanted to mention this. And again, if I'm mistaken, just tell me. Your product doesn't control outlets. You need a go between. Am I correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
You'd have to use like a Home Assistant. It's it's an uphill
Right.
climb. It's a lot to it, but it's worth it because it's incredibly cool.
Oh yeah.
And there's this push out there to develop the kind of universal protocol called Matter.
Okay.
I don't know how much you know about
I
that,
don't know
but
what that
we're sort
is.
of
Sorry.
it's kind of a thing that everyone has wanted to exist for a really long time for Internet of Things devices, but it's like, hey, it all speaks the same language. So if you had an outlet that came from one GE, or you had a SensorPush sensor and some other product, by some other company, they'd all use the same protocol and so would everybody's apps and all the software, and if that does finally take root, it's the kind of thing we're hoping to be definitely on board with. So
Yeah. So
it
what I
eventually will, but to answer your question, yeah, not yet, not
Yeah,
right
so
now.
what
We're
I
not, we
use
don't think that's
for those that are asking, I use what's called a Habitat hub. And what I like about the Habitat hub is it's 100% custom. You could do whatever you want with it. It has a Zigbee and it has a Bluetooth. It has everything all built into it. And you can go out and buy any outlet you want. And then there is a software API, of course, like we discussed, that goes into the hub, and then the Habitat hub controls my outlets. So in my enclosure outside, I have heaters out there, and the heaters turn on and off depending on my sensor push temperature. And again, that's all done through the Habitat hub. And what's also really cool about the Habitat hub is it also allows me to send signals to my home automation system, which is what you just saw in the picture. So for people that, and I've had a number of people ask me how I'm doing this. There is a go between. It doesn't Sensor Push doesn't just connect to this as a Crestron system, so it doesn't connect directly to Crestron. I have a hub which then I can connect all of my different devices to, and that's how I'm able to do this. And it also alerts me as well. So, and I know your app as well alerts you, and I was going to talk a little bit about that with you, but I have it all set up for custom alerts, so it'll only alert me if it goes over a certain amount of degrees for a certain period of time. I mean, that's what's so great about the Habitat Hub is you can program all of that stuff. And people are asking, well, how could you integrate us in the reefing controllers? Well, again, just like any other device, the reefing controller would have to contact SensorPush and say, "Hey, we'd like to work with you guys," and that doesn't happen very often in our hobby. They don't like to work with each other sometimes, but that's how it would have to happen, or they would have to get a hold of the API and they'd have to integrate it into their system. Uh, so I hope that answers some of the guys' questions here. So
yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, go ahead.
so one of my so I got a couple things I wanted to ask you since I have you.
Sure.
One of which is the alerts. Now that I just was talking about it, one of the one of the things I'm concerned, and you said you're the developer of the app, so perfect. It would be nice for you to add an ability to delay the alert, or possibly make it so it doesn't alert you right away. It gives it time, because sometimes, specifically temperature will bounce a little bit, and that's why again I have like a buffer that will send me an alert only if it's been 5 degrees higher for an hour. You know what I mean? So that would be
Yeah.
kind of cool to add to the app, because I do like getting alerts directly from the device itself, because who knows if my Habitat just decides to go down someday. um, so
Right.
again, that's just an ask. Maybe down the road you guys can do something with those, because that would be cool.
Yeah, no, and we agree actually. And it's the kind of thing we've prototyped a few times on and off and has just gotten it's sort of backburnered, but not, and that makes it sound like it's off it's more a
It's
matter
okay.
of,
You don't have to trust me. In our hobby, everything's on the back burner for years. So you won't
Yeah, well,
disappoint
no, in
me.
our well, it's yeah, but I appreciate you saying that, but it's hardly our hobby. So it's the kind of thing that there's a number of challenges. I mean, to be frank, that are we face with the fact that the devices support use with a gateway, which we maybe should backtrack a little bit and talk just one or two bits more about that. But or some people use them
Yeah.
just directly with Bluetooth on their mobile device. So if you're just using them, so in other words, we have this, as Derek was saying, we have the gateway device, which maybe a fair number of you know is just that it's a hub that can sit and listen to the Bluetooth broadcasts from all the sensors and relay them online. You can have one gateway, you can have n number, as many
Right.
gateways as you want. They can be the same location, they can be in different locations, but they can all be on the same account. And all the gateways on the account will always have a comprehensive list of all the sensors on the account. So if sensors ever come and go or things get moved around, every gateway will always know the whole list of sensors that you have
Mhm.
and will know it needs to monitor them. However, we have some people who use the sensors just with Bluetooth because there's a lot of use cases that's the only time you need it. Like if you're a piano tuner or whatever,
Yeah, you
you
just
only
need it
need
for
it
a
to
few
log stuff.
minutes. Yeah.
Right. However, trying to make delays work where there's a lot of motion involved and sensors come and go. So say, a
I
sensor, you're
see.
like, hey, I only, right. And it goes above a certain temperature for 5 minutes, let me know. Well, in that 5 minute period of time, it's gone. It
Well,
doesn't check
maybe,
in. Well,
and I'm
what does
sure.
that mean? So
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you realize it, but I'm sure the right solution there would be just make it happen when it's on a gateway, and then when it flips to Bluetooth, be like, you can't do that anymore. But I don't know how difficult that
yes,
is.
no, no, no. That's definitely one of the things where like the fail safe is like, look, if we can't make it to work this other
Right.
way or whatever, it'll be a gateway only feature. And some things are like that, like email alerts can only work because you have to have this stuff online in order for us to know about it
So
and send an email.
yeah, so the people that might be confused right now, I have a whole video on setting it up. I have a whole video on how they work, what the gateway is. You can also, of course, go to their website. It explains everything. They have a really good website. And basically, in a nutshell, they are Bluetooth out of the box, and you can use them without the gateway. The gateway lets you basically view them wherever you want. That's how I look at it. You don't have to be close to them, you don't have to be near them. You can get all the
Yeah.
information. So another thing I was going to ask you is the battery on them. Is there an alert to tell you when the battery's low? Because I don't know if I've ever received one.
Yeah, the people ask that question a lot. It's like the kind of thing we probably need to have more prominently in the manual, but because it comes up in large part because the batteries do last quite a long time.
Right.
By default, there should be 1 to 2 years, in some cases longer, even in a freezer, which will reduce their life the most. Mine usually about 14, 15 months. But because of that, the battery alerts don't happen that often, and so there is an alert, and it's just like it looks relatively similar to the other kinds. There are notifications or email alerts if you're using a gate when you've got those activated, and it just says the battery on so and so is low and needs replaced. You can always check it too. There's if you select a sensor from the app and then you scroll down to the summary section in the app, it gives you some data about the sensor,
Right. It
like
gives
the
you the
model number, the
battery
ID,
information.
but it'll tell you the voltage on it, right? And the voltage anything around 2.3 volts is really time to get it replaced. And actually, that's one thing. Batteries. I have to put this the right way. Going to an electronics supply vendor directly is probably the way to go with getting batteries. Buying batteries from a large, multi-purpose, extremely large, extremely multi-purpose organization to get your batteries, you're, risking batteries that have been on the shelf too long.
Mm-hmm.
So I would recommend, like we use
Well,
frequently
it's
Mouser
interesting.
Electronics.
It's interesting you say that because guess where I got all of my sensors from?
Yes. Oh, no, no, that part's okay. It's not that. It's the batteries themselves. It really is. It's like sometimes there are a lot of good battery vendors on the big, sellers, but there are definitely like going to Granger, going to Mouser, going to DigiKey, one of those kinds of
Okay.
companies. That's the best way to get these batteries by far.
Okay. So here is, and again, this is more of a personal thing. I have one of my sensors that just keeps on. Um, it just doesn't want to work, and I don't know why. I put a new battery in, it works fine for about a month, and then it stops. Any idea? Just out of curiosity.
What model is that?
What
What model
model?
sensor is
Oh,
it?
model. It's I have all the same ones, the HTWs.
Okay.
But you see,
Uh,
this one's always red, and luckily it's on a enclosure that doesn't really matter too much. But all the
right.
other ones, for those that don't realize, they're every minute. Like I get an update. I mean, I could tell you when I was shopping for all of them, I bought is it starts with an A, Apogee or Opagi or
Apogee, yeah.
I don't know what it was, but they have basically it's basically your competitor in a nutshell, and
Right.
they update every 5 minutes, and sometimes you don't get anything from them. And once I saw yours, I was like, oh, it's probably gonna update every 10 minutes, and then I put it in. I go, wow, this thing updates every minute. So, I mean, if you have a temperature spike all of a sudden, you're gonna get it. You're gonna know right away. So
Right.
it's a great product. I don't know how much more I can say how much I love it. I mean, I really I got to tell
We
you.
can dig into that red sensor a little bit more if you'd like to put me on the spot. I'm happy to
I'm just
troubleshoot
curious.
that with you.
I'm just again. I
But
just am
actually, no, it could be
curious.
instructive. Here are my first thoughts. Sometimes a situation like that is someone buys like a 10 pack of batteries, right? And they're from the same pack and they're all junk. And so they were some not junk. They might even be a brand name. They just were on the shelf at the vendor too long, and so they just all like I
So do
went
you
through
have
one
a
every
rec?
2 weeks, that kind of thing.
Do you have a
The
recommendation? Specific batteries we should be looking for, or does it?
a lot of times we ship them with Panasonic, but there are plenty of
Yeah,
other
this is a
really solid,
Panasonic.
right. But the other thing it could be is if the firmware needs rebooted for some reason, it could just be burning through, like trying to broadcast too much or whatever, that kind of a thing.
Okay.
And the third thing, it could just be there's a fault in the sensor and we need to replace it. And those can either be it was a defect or something else happens. Like sometimes a condensation will happen. It'll create a short or some
I mean,
deposits will form.
they do get a lot of water on them. I gotta say.
Or yeah, and it depends on how they're used. But some people might have materials that they're using that kind of just they're not even so much corrosive, but they just may have some conductive things, aspects of them that leave deposit, stuff that will put a battery into kind of hyperdrive. Or, like I said, it could be defect. But the reality is with these things, and this is sort of your point quite a bit earlier about, warranty and stuff like that. We really don't ask a lot of questions other than can we fix it?
Mm-hmm.
Or because we don't want to we don't want you to be in a situation where you get a replacement and the same thing happens. So if we ever probe for like what's going on here, it's not because we ever doubt a customer. Because to be honest with you, we have the best community. These are people who are interested in solving problems. They're great. So we almost always just replace something almost, not no questions asked, but the questions we ask are
Very
just to
basic.
be helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and they're like,
mean,
hey, just again, just so it
and
doesn't happen the next time.
I'm glad you mentioned it because the people that are watching, again, most of us are reefing people, and I can tell you in our industry that seems to be a point of contention. A lot of the time with the products that we go through is our product is the best. There's nothing wrong with it. We're not going to help you. We're going to ask you 6 billion
Oh,
questions. And again, I'm glad that you mentioned it because there was one sensor I had an issue with, and you guys sent me out a new one. No questions asked. Essentially, no questions asked. There was one question. Hey, what's your address? But you know what I mean.
yeah, totally.
Um,
And again, like I said, if we ask questions, it's not because we doubt our customers. It's because we want to make sure that they're not stuck in the same situation the next round when they get a replacement. Because that can happen if you don't. Just make sure you know what's going on. Not so much in your particular set of use cases, but like for someone who's like hatching eggs or something like that, like, well, where's the thermometer placed? And they're like, well, it's covered over with a sticker. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Well, okay, next time you get one, make sure you don't cover it. We'll send you a replacement because that one's broken or whatever, and that kind of thing. But we actually have enjoyed designing our test process about as much as anything else. Like we've built machines specifically to test the devices in a variety of different things, different ways, and we've enjoyed that honestly as much as anything else because
That's
it's
great.
it's more nerd
So,
stuff.
so tell everybody where we can get these because I bought all mine on Amazon, which is great. They're easy to get. Is there any other places that you might want to mention that people can get these at, or is Amazon your
Yeah,
main?
I mean, Amazon's the main thing, just because it's easy, it's convenient and easy, and it's easy to return it. It's easy to do a whole bunch of different things. Um, but we also have a direct sales site. You can go to shop.sensorpush.com
Okay.
and order from us directly. We have our own, fulfillment center that's in Pennsylvania. Um, so it's if you're outside the U.S., there are, you can buy in Canada. I think Canada's inventory is low at the moment, but it won't be for long. Um, the UK, I mean, I don't know if people are watching this late, but the point is that if you're in Europe or UK, reach out to us because we're actually recertifying a lot of stuff. So a lot of that stuff will go back on sale on Amazon in Europe. We have a lot of customers in Germany, a lot in Italy, Denmark, and the
Oh wow.
UK in particular,
And do they
but and
all get them
Australia
on
as well.
Amazon? They get them on Amazon, I presume, as well over there.
Yeah, or through a couple of our resellers like gromart.de in Germany and heronhill.co.uk
Okay.
in the UK. There's a couple of resellers in Australia too. So if any of you are tuned in sort of from there, uh, reach out to us and we'll kind of get you in touch with whatever the local vendor is. And if you're
We
not in
have
one of those places, and then we have other people as well. But shop.sensorpush.com in the US and then Amazon or in the US are
okay.
good as well.
Yeah, we
And
have.
we're also doing bulk pricing too for people. If and
You
don't
need 1,000 of them.
we have bulk
Yeah.
buyers with giant numbers, but we also if someone does need like if you reach out if you're like look I need 10 sensors and can always contact us because we have a lot of promos that are running all the time. We always figure out
It's funny.
maybe
You.
wait till next month because we're doing a promo or
It's
whatever. We'll let you
interesting
know.
that you mentioned that. Well, before what I was going to say, a lot of people watch this after. A lot of people. We have a lot of people in Australia and UK that watch my stream after because they can't watch it live, obviously. But to your point, I've been reaching out to a lot of reptile people because the great thing about reptile hobbyists is unlike fish tank hobbyists, they don't have one fish tank. They don't have one reptile enclosure.
No, they
They
have.
have many. Just like me, I have
Yes,
25 animals, just to give you an idea.
exactly.
And
All the time. That's definitely like particularly with snakes.
oh yeah,
But yeah, right. People will have two, three, 4 dozen sensors running at once.
my wife is asking, do they get a lot of orders from zoos? Do you have your product in zoos in any commercial capacity?
We do actually. We have, in fact, the Smithsonian Zoo in DC uses a lot of our sensors, and they're not the only one. They're just sort of the most famous one, but we hear from them all the time. So, certainly some of the more bizarre this sensor went missing kind of scenarios, and no one wants to go into the lion cage to get it kind of stuff. There's certainly been a number of those, but yeah, and definitely and we have a lot of reptile customers. We have a
Oh, I'm
lot of
sure.
reptile customers,
You
and
know,
it's a cool community too because they really know a lot about what they're doing. And there's again the knowledge sharing thing. They're going to be really excited to hear a lot of the stuff that you've done, Derek, with that dashboard. And
well, let them know.
they know a lot about
You
using
hear
a lot of
any?
them.
Honestly, if you hear anybody that has reptiles and they need some help, send them my way because we're
Definitely.
trying to build that portion of our channel here. And I can tell you that I think the biggest thing, honestly, John, is that they're wireless. That's really the biggest thing. Um, yes, they're very accurate. Yes, you can get them on your phone. But the fact that they're wireless is such a big deal because no one wants to run humidity wiring all over their enclosures and all over their. They just want to stick it in there and call it a day. And the fact that you can just literally grab your phone and just point at it and it's set up, I mean, it's a slam dunk. It really is. But the fact that they're
The other
wireless,
thing I
that's the
think that
biggest
helps
thing.
it, that the wireless plus the fact that they're battery powered and that in a way that lasts as long as it does. So it's like because there are certain architectures you could make for this. Like if they had onboard Wi-Fi, it'd be very convenient in many respects because it's the Wi-Fi is
It would
already there.
drain the
You wouldn't need a
battery, though.
separate hub. Exactly. It'll last you 3 months. And it'll be probably taking the temperature once every 5 or 10 minutes. That's the other thing.
That's probably what the other one was. It was probably Wi-Fi.
Right.
Right.
So, and again, I actually, those are cool products and they really, I'm not interested in knocking anyone's stuff. It has its own
I do
application
that.
use that's
You don't have to
killer.
worry about that. I will do that
But,
with the reefing
but it's
club
true.
stuff.
The fact that they're wireless and the fact that the batteries last as long as they do makes it just, a huge deal.
Cool. Well, we're getting to about an hour. I'm just wanting to make sure there's nothing else. Um, we didn't have a lot of people enter the giveaway, unfortunately. I'm looking at it right now. So anybody that enters the giveaway is pretty much gonna get a SensorPush sensor. Um, but it's the usual suspects, my buddies that came on tonight, so that's good. But like I said, people will watch this after the fact. And I'm trying to think if there was any other questions I had. Any new products you guys are looking at doing? Anything on the horizon that you want to mention at all?
Yeah, well, we're working on a couple of different prototypes.
And do you
We're
need someone
trying
to
to
test them?
dis
Because I will do it.
Yeah, in fact, we don't we don't have we have no hesitancy to just share the kinds of things we're working on, but we don't want to get people excited in case some feasibility doesn't pan out because we can't make it in our cost kind of window or that kind of stuff. But if anyone's interested in being a tester, probably sort of toward the end of the first quarter next year, sort of end of February, March time, uh, reach out. Just email us at at support@sensorpush.com, or just hit the help link on our website and just say, hey, I'd like to be a tester. Tell us where you saw us talk about it. But because we do always need testers, you want to get it out there. And the thing is, it's not, we always run it. We have our own internal tests. We have a group of people we test with all the time. But it's like, okay, well, there, are this number of use cases that it addresses, but there's always so many more that aren't. And getting our tires kicked in ways we wouldn't have anticipated is really valuable.
Terrific. Sorry, I got a little. Someone asked a question. They asked, "Do you do barometric pressure? Is that what the pressure is on the higher end model?"
Yes, the
Okay.
HTP.XW does barometric. It does it. You can either have it like atmospheric or barometric, and to do barometric, you have to enter your altitude, of course. But yeah, totally. It's one of the reasons we did that. So in fact, that actually one thing for anyone who's also concerned about sort of security, privacy stuff. For a long time, Android would require location, and for a while, so did Apple. But a lot of the requirements for asking for location access was just because they considered the Bluetooth beacon part about wayfinding, and so they just bundled those parts of the
Yeah.
software together. So we said, hey, we're not looking for your location, but we have to ask you to let us look for your location. It was always a sort of a tricky thing, and occasionally people were upset, but we always try to say, look, we don't want it.
I know.
The only time we ever use
Just the way of
location
the
now, though,
world,
is if you.
unfortunately.
It is, and we believe me, we're the first people to respect. We would really rather not have to ever have done any of that. But the one time we use location now is if you want to use the location finder to look up your altitude for the barometric pressure sensing.
I see.
So
That
you can
makes
even enter it.
sense.
If you don't want to do that, you can enter it manually too, if you know your altitude.
Okay.
So
But yeah, you're going to need to know that, so that makes sense.
yes.
Otherwise, it won't work. All right. Let's see. I guess I will start giving away these. Which ones are we giving away? Are we giving away the HTWs? Which one are we giving away?
Actually, you know what? So if why don't we do the XW since someone showed interest in the
He's probably going to
and the
win.
barometric pressure. Yeah, right. There you go. So let's do that. Let's do the HTP.XW. So this has the same features, Derek, that the one that Derek's been talking about. It has a slight increase of accuracy in terms of the temperature humidity. Again, it'd be hard pressed to really get the extra gain from that, but it does have the added pressure sensor. So why not?
Awesome. All right, here we go. Number one is me, so that doesn't count. Number I have
Number
to
two
always,
is me.
I have to enter myself because it won't work otherwise. All right, here we go. C. Mathis, you are one of our winners.
All right, congratulations.
All right, let's see. Sid, I don't know if Sid's still here, but he won one. And then our third winner is Manny. Look at that. I know all these people.
Good.
So I'll reach out to them and we'll get them taken care of. But yeah, I really, I got to say, John, I really appreciate you being here. Um, like I said, we got a lot of reefers on here. That's just where my 4,000 plus subscribers have been watching me for 2.5 years. This reptile thing is something I'm working on with my wife. So this is gonna be big if people start to use your product. I got a couple reptile YouTubers coming on. I'm gonna definitely mention your product to them. It's surprising when I speak to them and they have zero humidity sensing. They go to Home Depot, they get one of those humidity LCD displays and they just throw them in the tank.
Right.
And I tell them about this and they go, wow, how are you doing that? And then I show them the touch panel. They go, oh, okay, I'm sold. Once I show them that.
And that panel's cool, man. We were all impressed by that and glad that's, because it's definitely something people are doing. But yours was the first we'd seen quite in that area. And it was just like, this is awesome. It's just nicely done. And it was just cool. Makes us really glad that we put the effort into the API stuff. And
oh yeah, listen, it's cool. I don't, my whole life is automation. I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm a developer like you. That's all I do on a daily basis. So I do home automation, but the fact that I have everything integrated in my house, and that's why I started the channel, to show people how to do this stuff. And I'm going to do a video on the habitat and how I'm all doing that. It's going to be a long video.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one because it's going to be interesting to so many different people in a million different areas. So yeah, please let us know when you do. In fact, that goes for anyone. Any cool automation stuff, even if you're like, hey man, it's just this simple, dumb little thing that I did, and I do plenty of those myself. Let us know. Let us know, or post it on GitHub, or do something. Get it out there because someone will use it. Someone will definitely find it beneficial.
Yeah, when I thought about
even if it's something, actually one other thing, Derek, because even if it's something that someone else has done, but they did it in Python, and you did it in Ruby, or they did it in Node.js, and you did it in Java, whatever it is, if you're just even remaking something, that it's just in itself is hugely valuable. So anyway, sorry to interrupt, but I thought
like I said, I'm gonna make a video, guys, on how I'm doing that. And what's interesting to the people that are reef hobbyists watching this is my program and what I did. It also can work with reefing. I can show you kind of how I use not only John sensors but other sensors to work with it. So it's going to be a long video, but it's going to take me some time to make it. But I'm excited to show people how I did that, because when I thought of it, I was like, oh, this is going to be the coolest thing ever. So, and I love it. My wife loves it. She can walk into the room, and instead of having to literally go up to every enclosure like we used to and look at the tiny little LCD screen that's sitting next to each enclosure, all she got to do is look at the touch panel. It's nice and colorful and big. And I also have alerts on it, so it turns red and turns blue when there's an alert to tell you it's too high and too cold. So it's a nice little thing for just easing of the hobby, I guess is the right term. Make it easier. I don't have to worry about it. So.
Oh yeah.
All right, John. Well, it's probably late by you, and I don't want to keep you too long. Thank you so much again for coming on. This was a pleasure. Personally, for
Likewise.
me, I don't know about everybody that's reefing, but for me, it was a pleasure. And for people that watch this after the fact, I think they're going to be very interested in your product. And once we get out those giveaways, I think people are going to start talking about it a little bit more in our hobby as well. So,
Excellent.
all right,
And
John.
reach out anytime. We're always around.
So sensorpush.com, right? That's the best way to get a hold of you guys.
Yeah, and hit the help link there, and it's frequently me or one of the other engineers. It's not, it's always me someone who knows what they're doing.
And you guys, I would recommend getting them on Amazon. They got good prices. I don't know if your prices change everywhere, but Amazon's got good prices. And if you need them in bulk, John said just give them a holler, and maybe they'll give you a bulk price or some, I don't know, whatever ends up happening there.
Always let us know.
All right, John. Well, you have a good evening. And again, I really
appreciate
having you
Everybody,
on.
thanks.
This was a lot of fun. So.
Likewise.
All right.
Cool.
See
Take care,
later.
guys. Bye-bye.